Welcome to the B-Sides and Beers podcast.
Hey. All right. Welcome to B-Sides and Beers podcast, episode 7. Today we'll be talking about Deftones' Adrenaline, their debut album from 1995.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's start off once again, our usual manner. What are we drinking tonight?
I'll start. I have a stout.
You will stout, yes.
I'll start. I've been excited about this. I've been waiting for this one to crack this one all day. This is a stout from a brewery called Il Savage in Victoria.
Oh, cool.
So apparently it's just like a regular stout, but aged on coffee beans.
Cool.
Yeah.
Best of both worlds.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the name of it's another Victoria company. Anyway, it's aged on coffee beans, so it should be good. Let's give it a
crack.
crack.
Perhaps this is the. Are you talking about Phillips Brewing Company out of Victoria?
They're good too.
Okay, well that's what I'm drinking tonight. I'm drinking the Glitter Bomb.
Oh, nice.
The hazy pale ale Glitter Bomb, and it says this hazy pale ale explodes with lush citrus and juicy fruit notes that will sparkle across your palate. Pairs well with disco naps and Scooby snacks.
Nice.
Awesome.
I'm really into pale ales these days. They're delicious.
Awesome.
Smells good.
What you got, Mike?
Oh yeah.
Tonight we have some innocent gun.
Well, there you
Haven't
go.
had
Oh, I love
Yeah, I
Innocent
haven't had it in
Gun.
a while. Bourbon barrel Scotch ale.
You know it's expensive when they just sell a single beer in
Yeah.
a box. That's
Yeah.
big time.
And to open it, I have the coolest, most kick-ass bottle opener ever. Years back, my amazing wife, she surprised me with a gift of a bottle opener in the shape of a Lemmy.
Nice. I was like, Jesus?
Almost. Pretty damn close. Lemmy is God. Yep.
There you go.
So, yeah, pretty kick-ass.
Awesome.
Jesus open
Jesus,
my
open
beer.
my beer.
Cheers, boys.
Hey, same to you. Absolutely.
Cool. So, where do we want to start with this one here? A little bit of info, a little bit of first impressions. Didn't really have a huge reason, any crazy background for why I picked this one, but it's just a hugely influential album to me in, I guess, 95, so 14 kind of thing. So 14, 15, just getting into, I guess, 15 for high school. The first time I came across this album or anything with Deftones was through Much Music once again. I think it was either Bored or 7 Words, I think, was the music video that I heard first. And this came out it was October 3rd, 95. So I think I got it probably spring, January, February kind of deal of the following year. And it was just such a huge album for me. So.
And this is in your top 10, Mike?
I would think it's a top 10 for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I came into Deftones on the next
Around the
album,
Fur?
actually.
Yep.
I was Around the Fur. Yeah, I didn't know this album. I went backwards on it later, even after I think White Pony. I listened to White Pony, and then I went back and I listened to this album, and like it. I think like at the beginning of it, maybe I kind of wrote it off because it felt like it came at that time of like all that new metal that like I wasn't interested in. Like I wasn't into Papa Roach. I wasn't into, any of that kind of stuff. Like I the only ones I could listen to, I guess, were Korn, and I could listen to Limp Bizkit on a certain day. I'm just thinking of that kind of genre around that time, right? But yeah, so I think I kind of wrote it off as like more of it. You know what I mean? And then I went back and I listened to it and I'm like, okay, this is different. Like this is, but then again, like this term of new metal is so like,
it's just subjective. Like grunge. What does it mean?
Yeah, like we talked about before.
Well, the thing with that is, Korn and Deftones were probably the first two to come out in that prior to the naming of that genre, and then the other bands you were talking about were the next wave of that. So, and I wholeheartedly agree with you in the disinterest in the the second wave of it, but with Korn and Deftones and even Limp Bizkit to a point, I just like the raw sort of brutal production with them from Ross Robinson and that kind of a thing. So
yeah, I always think of Tool to be like one of the originators of this new metal genre.
Wow,
because they were around. They were Undertow was quite a popular album.
Yeah,
back in like 92. When did that one come out? 91, 92?
I think it was 92. Because I think Opiate came out in 91.
Opiate came out then.
Okay. Yeah, I always think of them as like, when you think of new metal, and especially like stuff that wasn't necessarily rap rock new metal, but like new metal that was progressive, not like punk rock, but not like metal, but like more melodic, different sounds, tons of layering.
Yeah.
Like,
well, Tool was definitely on their own path. There was really nobody at the time that even sounded like them. So, and that's what I really dug about Deftones was at the time there was nobody that sounded like them. Even
exactly.
Korn was super new, but they had their own thing. Yes, there was the hip hop influence and the hip hop drums and that kind of the detuned guitars and whatnot, but they still had their own thing. So, and where Korn had their set, two guitar players playing 7-string, Stefan was standard tuning 6-string, and he still got these really kick-ass riffs out of it. So, yeah,
for sure. I think when this album was just a complete flashback to high school. It's like, I think for me, Deftones is one of those bands that like I'm really into or I don't even think about for years. Right. And I listened to this album and it was like going back to grade 10 again. Yep. And the great thing about Deftones back then, I think for me, I remember thinking that they were so cool because they had this sort of like skate rock kind of image to them. Like they had a purpose and they had like a legit image and all that stuff you think is important when you're a teenager. And I think like, it was just something about them was cool. If you listen to Deftones, then you were like, didn't have to say anything. You were just cool.
Right. And that's exactly where they came. That's exactly where they came from. They all, Chino, Steph, and Abe, the drummer, met in high school. And it was all through skateboarding for the most part. So,
I don't want to, unload on this album because I don't.
Oh, come on, unload.
I know you like it, so I don't want to step on it. But like, I think of this album like, it's kind of like the Pablo Honey, or it's like the first album that's like, it's super raw, and I
Yep.
like it for that, but it feels like when we go to Around the Fur and we go to White Pony, those feel like so much like better, like leaps and bounds. It feels like they're starting out and they're really like rough. It feels like in this, and again, there's a certain allure to that. But if you sat down and gave me Deftones and said you got to pick one album, I'd probably pick White Pony.
Most people do, because that's kind of
off.
where they launched into the mainstream. It's kind of like Black Album for Metallica, right? So, but
but I don't know. But Around the Fur is good too. Like I really like that album. Like that's probably my second one. But yeah, I don't know. Because I listened to it again and I'm kind of like Dane, it all came back like to like 97, 98 kind of for me, right? And then I listened to it again and I was like, yeah, like it's okay, like it's good, but I like these ones better.
Well, the production was definitely a step up from Adrenaline to Around the Fur.
Why? Like that's the thing. Like I looked at these two. Like okay, so you said Ross Robinson.
Well, Ross Robinson,
and the other guy, Terry
Ross
Date.
Robinson, actually only did one song for. It was one song on Adrenaline, the very last song, and I didn't think that was the strongest one. But they've got what was his name?
It's Terry Date that did the production.
Terry Date. Yeah. He had a ton, man. Like he did Bad Motorfinger, he did Cowboys from Hell, he did Astro Creep 2000. Like,
let me stop you right there, Mike, because I was thinking about this and like, so I was trying to figure out, because I totally agree with you. Like, there's a huge step in production from Adrenaline to Around the Fur, and like Around the Fur, for me reminds me of The Matrix, and I think that song was on that movie, and everyone who sort of got on board with Deftones then. But the album, I was listening to it, again because of this podcast, and to me it sounds a bit tinny, and the tone doesn't work. And then I was checking out Terry Date, and he produced Pantera. And when you think about Pantera, they have this very tinny, metal, sharp sound to them, which works. But it doesn't necessarily work with Chino's. Well, maybe it does work with Chino's vocals. It's just different. It's kind of an odd tone, but you hear it with other bands like Pantera. So,
well, it's funny because they chose Terry Date because they loved the Vulgar Display of Power album, and that was the one that he just kind of came off of.
Huge album,
and huge, but. They said they went into the studio. They wanted him because he did that album. They love that sound, but they didn't want him to do that sound once they got into the deal or into the studio there. And how Terry Date approached it is more of a live off the floor type deal. So nobody was separated for the most part, and even Chino. For his vocals, he just had a regular SM57 mic, a Shure SM57, and he had a floor monitor in front of him, which is, not the way to record an album, in the mainstream of things. But the biggest thing is he just wanted to catch they wanted to capture the live performance and the energy and the raw and the the not perfection to it. And that's one thing that I really like about it is how stripped down and how exactly in the moment it was, right? And once again, it's kind of a time capsule too, because they were barely 20.
Yeah.
When they were barely 20 when they recorded these, and to come up with an album like that at that time, and the songs, all the songs are solid. And that was one thing about every Deftones album after this. For me, I like the higher energy, heavier side of things, and it seemed like everything after Around the Fur just kind of got a little more melodic and soft, and they would have sections where it was huge, heavy riffs, and then it would just be super melodic and kind of sleepy at parts, kind of Depeche Mode or that sort of, that kind of thing, a little bit of shoegaze influence to it, or yeah, so that's kind of where I was at with that. I love the raw energy of it. So
What does shoegaze mean?
Shoegaze, it's a style of music where the guitar players use a lot of ambient effects.
Gotcha.
And pretty well their stage presence is kind of standing there looking down at their shoes. So they kind of called it shoegaze. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, tons of reverbs and delays and
Atmospheric stuff.
exactly.
Right.
So, but stepping from this album to Around the Fur, yes, the production, even though it was the same producer, they decided to go in a little more professional studio style than a live off the floor energy. So that's kind of where everything changed.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's, you bring up a good point, Dane, because it's, when you think about the other things that he's produced, it kind of falls in line with that sound, right? Mm-hmm. Like it makes sense. Right. But
he's on Soundgarden, louder than love.
Yeah, he did Bad Motorfinger. Like he did a ton. Like there's a whole bunch of solid
Mother Love
albums.
Bone Apple.
Yeah.
Astro Creep 2000.
Yeah.
So,
it's funny about the cover. I didn't know what the hell was on the cover until I had kids.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Literally, man, I had no idea what that was. I thought it was like a sex toy. When I was a teenager, I thought that's what it was. Mm-hmm. I was like, all right, well, maybe I'll find out one day what that is. But yeah, I didn't know what it was, and I saw it, and I'm like, is that what that is? Oh, okay.
Yep. I couldn't find or figure out why they picked a baby aspirator for it.
I didn't find it either. I was like, I don't know why, but yeah, it's a strange album cover choice when there's, I don't know.
Yeah.
I always thought it was some sort of organic sea creature. Some weird, like, shell.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway.
That's...
Did you know what it was, Mike?
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
No, I didn't for quite some time. I mean, why would you have a point of reference with that if you don't have kids, right?
Yeah. And if there's nothing on the internet that tells you what it is either, it's like...
Yeah. You can't use the word to search it out if you don't know the words. So
yeah. I do like the a lot of the vocal though on this album. Like I do like the soft when he goes down to the soft and the calm, and then goes to like the raw scream. Like the
contrast of it.
Yeah, that sounds cool. I really like that part of this album. So that was good. But yeah, it just feels like, not that it's bad, but I just think they take the next step in Around the Fur. I think that it's like,
definitely,
and that's a lot of bands too, right? Like I'm sure that we can do another podcast on bands that had a, decent first album, and then the next album was like, the greatest thing in the world. So
not everybody put out Appetite for Destruction. So
no, right? Like, and that's the thing, right? Going back to '87, that's that's just it. But yeah, there are some good things about this album. Like I said, it's just, as a whole, Around the Fur I like better.
Yeah, there you go.
Podcast, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The you want the hot facts? You guys want
Yes,
the hot
please.
facts?
Mike,
Okay,
the hot
here's
facts.
real quick. So their first tour was opening up for Monster Magnet.
Gross.
Monster Magnet and Sugar Ray opened up for them.
Oh, gross.
When was that? When was that? Because I've got them.
I found an interview with Chino, and and then the next thing that they were opened up for Kiss, and he said the entire time there was guys in the front row just giving him the finger the entire time with Kiss makeup on, and he's
yes, I know you hate us.
Yeah. So those are the only hot facts I've got on that. That's I thought the Kiss thing was funny. So
yeah. Well, they toured a lot with Korn at the start. They did a run with a short run anyway with White Zombie, and all this was in support for Adrenaline. And they did a month on with Kiss on their live worldwide tour.
The farewell tour, part 60.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
No, really this time. No, really.
No,
Wasn't
really.
that the We're Back tour? I think they were like back and they had been gone for like 10 years or something.
I saw him one time with my dad in the Coliseum, and we were sitting like way up top. Ted Nugent, Skid Row opened up, and Ted Nugent opened up. Ted Nugent was fantastic.
Ted Nugent was fantastic.
Oh my goodness, man. He was so entertaining. You couldn't take your eyes off him. He was just walking around with like this like really long like raccoon tail, and he was just like prancing around, just going like this. And then at the end of the at the end of every single song, everybody would be cheering. He'd just hold the guitar out like this, like, and just like give it all up for the guitar, and then like put the guitar back on. End of the show, puts the guitar up on the mantle, gets down with the flaming bow and arrow, and lights that thing on fire. And I'm like, this is awesome.
Cat scratch fever.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Stranglehold, baby. Anyway, so yeah, then Kiss came on. We were sitting way up, and you could feel the heat from all the flash spots way up. Yeah, like in the 300 level. It was just crazy. But my dad and I had this thing where we wanted to see like any of those like kind of heritage acts that ever came through town. We were like, we'll go if anybody comes like that. So, you know, we went to lots of those kind of shows just because we were like, we got to do it. We got to see Kiss, or we'll never see him again. But we probably could have.
Oh man. How was, I mean, obviously Kiss has like a stage show that they're notorious for, right?
Oh, it was Makeup Kiss. Yeah. This was like Psycho Circus, like around then, if you remember that. Yeah, you know, like 98 kind of deal. So they were wearing makeup. I mean, yeah, it was a whole show. I mean, you know, Ace Frehley's guitar lights on fire and starts smoking. Yeah. You know, Gene Simmons flies up to the rafters and spits blood over himself. And yeah, it was everybody. It was Peter Criss. It was everybody. Like, it was the full band. So that's kind of another reason why we went. Because if it was like, you know, Paul Stanley and friends, we would have been like, no, you're playing. Yeah, exactly. Even, you know, I watched a Slash concert video the other day, and like he's just playing all the hits. It's like him and Miles Kennedy and these other guys, and they're just like banging out Velvet Revolver songs, and it's like it's a little schmaltzy, man. Like, it just, I don't know. But I was thinking about this too. Sorry, go ahead, man.
Oh, well, this is just, anyway. Have you ever seen the clip of Slash and he's like doing a solo with Michael Jackson? He's like on the guitar for a Michael Jackson song, and he won't stop soloing, and Michael throws a hissy fit. It's awesome.
Oh no, I haven't seen it.
It's hilarious.
That's great.
Yeah, if you haven't seen this, and like Slash just fucking big smile on his face, and he's just pulling out whatever 15-minute solo. It doesn't even sound good, but just to piss off Michael, and Michael is angry.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I'll check that out. That's good.
Right. Have you guys gotten into any of their albums after White Pony?
Not really. I tried listening to the next one, but I even forget what the next one was.
Wasn't it self-titled?
Yeah, their self-titled one.
Oh yeah,
I like that one.
Listen to that one. Yeah, that one's okay.
It was kind of Pink Floyd-y for me. Like, they had the single off that was Digital Bath, I think. I'm trying to remember.
Was that off of that one? I don't recall.
Anyway, I remember it came out, and a friend of mine was really into them. And he was like, yeah, it's awesome. But I think that's when they sort of took a different, road. They started getting a little, by Pink Floyd-y, I mean, just sort of like
experimental.
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't know. Good album. I like Bored and Birthmark. Got some notes here. especially Chino's like vocals on those two songs. I think, like, I can even remember going to a party and like hearing that song, and it was something I didn't really hear before.
Right.
And yeah, just Chino, awesome vocalist, and he does a lot of like features on other albums too that you don't even really realize it until you're like, wait a second.
He has a very unique scream.
Absolutely. I've been listening to,
and that's
I've been listening to a lot of Lamb of God, and don't have the song offhand here, but I think he makes an appearance on one of the songs, and it's not in like any credits at all, but I swear to God, he's on like a...
Yeah, there's a couple tracks that are kind of sneaky tracks where you kind of think it's him, but you're not sure.
Yeah. So, he's got the ability to do that. He kind of reminds me of like a Mike Patton almost, where he's got like a huge range. He experiments with a lot of different styles. And that has kind of been like their brand for me. Like they can go all over the place. And I think that self-titled album is just sort of like their way of exploring different things.
Right.
I think they're kind of known for doing that. So, yeah.
Are they still together?
Deftones? Yep.
Yeah.
It's almost original lineup. Their bass player passed away. What was it? Maybe I want to say 6 years ago or so.
Yeah.
I think it was a car accident.
It's a sad story, eh?
Yeah, he was awesome, and then he was in a coma for I think it was a year
No,
or so.
it was years.
Was it more than that?
It was a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, awful.
Yeah.
And then he just passed away from there.
Yeah.
From the coma.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was no recovering from that, and then they ended up bringing on a new bass player. But other than that, I think everything's still original. They brought in another guy, kind of a DJ type cat on what was it?
I think it was on Around the Fur.
I think it was I think it was after Around the Fur.
I thought it was. It's funny. I had one more note there too. That bass player wanted to be a teacher after they recorded Adrenaline, and they had to like call him back. I'm like, excuse me, like
he kept threatening that he was going to leave the band and go be a teacher.
Yeah, like all right,
yeah.
Just taking off.
The only one in the band with a backup plan. If this doesn't work, I'm going to go be a teacher.
Yeah, well, these days it feels like you got to, especially those guys. Like, I don't know how do you survive in the music industry, man? Like, if you're not Drake, if you're not, Post Malone, like, how do you do this? Like, you think about those
nowadays
small acts.
It's touring only.
Exactly.
Yep.
Touring. So like you're just hoping that somebody buys a whole ton of merch off your website. Like,
Well, even with that, if you're on a big label, a lot of these contracts now, since people aren't buying albums, the new contracts that are coming involve a percentage of your merch too. So, if you sign the wrong contract, you're making next to nothing. Like you have to tour like mad and sell all your stuff and do tons of different side hustles. You have to pair up with a guitar company to make a signature guitar and get profits from that. You look at a band like Periphery, they're basically the benchmark, I guess, for how to make money as a musician, and they've diversified so hard where they've got gear deals, like signature gear deals. They've got a company called Get Good Drums that they make and sell drum samples and things for mixing. And
sounds like work, man. Like it's what happened to being a rock star.
It's done, man. It's done. As soon as people stop buying albums for $20 a pop, and the record industry is drowning in money.
Yeah, like I think about like even if we had the band together these days, it would be like, and trying to make a go of it. How do you do that? Like if you can't play live and you can't sell a CD, what well, then what do you have? You know,
Right.
Other than
And that's why
t-shirts.
bands are becoming a brand more than a band, right? So you're establishing a brand. So your band name isn't just your band name. It's all these other things that you sell, and these from products to just time to, you know, online courses to all those. So
it's crazy.
Yeah, that's interesting. I got my cousin's son is in a band right now, which is like the heaviest band out there. They're awesome.
Yep.
Wake out of Calgary.
Okay.
And I think, you know, they have sort of found their circle. They kind of represent a genre of music, and they kind of own it, right? And so they've sort of found like their little. I shouldn't say little. It's, you know, they kind of represent the grindcore scene in Calgary. It's
Okay.
you know, like
Cool.
underground, but there are a lot of people interested in it. They have like you said, Mike, like a really sort of branded image, and it's done like very well. So they just released their second album, Devouring Ruin. Check it out; it's awesome.
Cool.
But
I will.
they are, you know, they still tour as much as they possibly can. They're obviously not touring right now, I don't think. But you know, I think it's just like
Yeah, they wouldn't be. Everything's shut down.
yeah,
So.
I think it's just sort of sticking with your circle and like, you know, banding up with other groups and, you know, just making quality shows that people want to come and see. I think it's still like you got to have, you know, the branding is definitely necessary, but I think it's like the people you surround yourself with as well. And that's where you see like bands surviving, like, because like you said, Mike, I don't know what it would be like if, you know, we were touring right now and how that would be. Because when we were out, I felt like we were so distinct from everyone else that we played with, right?
Yeah, we didn't sound like anybody else that we played with. So
I mean, there wasn't this sort of like music industry that we have now. It kind of, you know, back then we could get away with that sort of stuff, and you know, we could be a little bit different and play with bands that weren't necessarily. I remember we did one show with like a bunch of death metal guys, and they wound up liking us.
yeah,
And it was like, it was so great. It was
awesome.
It was such a great experience. And like, you get away with that stuff. And now I'm not so sure.
Yep.
Like, it's got to be like, you gotta kind of have to stick with your own kind, I guess. But I don't know. That's just my interpretation on it.
I rarely turned down a gig in those days, man. It would, if anybody came forward or whatever, I would accept it, right? Like, unless it was something shady that I didn't really know about. But like, for the most part, like, you know, it got to a point too where I didn't even have to call anymore. Like, my phone was starting to ring. So it was like, oh, like, you want us to do that? Okay, we'll do that. Like, oh, sorry, we're booked that night. We're already playing here.
We're playing the pig
we're
roast out in
booked for the
Devon.
next year.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Talk to my agent. Yeah, it's just funny how that started working, right? But yeah, it's weird these days, and especially those heritage acts, right? Like, even those ones, even you can call Deftones a heritage act now, right? Like,
Wow, yeah.
those guys are not selling CDs anymore, right? They're not selling concert tickets. So like, how do those guys, you know, you think that they probably made enough cash back in the day, you would hope, but like, you know, you see all those old cats coming on tour now. Rod Stewart, from him to everybody coming out of the woodwork because they're not selling, you know, copies of Hotel California anymore, and you know, the Eagles got to get out there. So I don't know.
Well, the big part of that too is the big festival. So if you're gonna go out and have your own headlining tour and bring out a couple guys or a couple different bands and try and do it that way, you're not gonna make a lot. But if you can get on the really big European tours, the massive festivals, that's where they make their money, it seems. And that's why you see when they release the band lists, the majority of it over half of it is at least the heritage bands, right? So
Yeah, and that's all
Yeah.
gone. So it's just
Yeah.
like, wow,
Yeah.
you know?
I had a student that he asked for like a couple like weeks off, and I was like, yeah, whatever, as long as you can pass your class, it's fine. And he went on a cruise ship, and there was like, it was a metal festival on a cruise ship. So
70,000 tons of metal.
yeah, it was something like that, right? And it was like, he's like, yo, man, like Soulfly is going to be there. And I was like, oh, okay, that's fine.
Rad.
Yeah.
And he's like, my dream is to meet like Max Calavera or whatever his name is. And so it's like
Cavalera, yeah.
They're like, you know, it's these sort of like gimmicky shows where you see like 20 metal bands on a cruise ship. And I think that's how these guys are sort of remaining relevant, right? I don't know who would go see Soulfly on their own at like whatever, you know, bar or wherever they would be playing these days. But you put them on like a cruise ship with a bunch of other guys.
I did.
I did too.
Well, they were through town here a couple years ago
way.
as they were touring. Actually, I saw them twice in the past 5 years. Once they came as Soulfly, and the next time they did the entire album of Nail Bomb.
Wow.
Are you familiar with Nail
Oh,
Bomb?
for sure.
Okay, so Max put out an album with his band, Nail Bomb, and at the time they only recorded one album, and they only played one concert, from what I understand, and then that was it.
Was Igor in that?
So, I don't recall.
Yeah.
But yeah. So it was cool because he had his son on drums.
Okay, so
And
Igor
I think he had one of his sons on drums, and it was his nephew, either his son or his nephew on guitar. No, it would have been bass, I think. Anyway, so he had family on there with him, and it was such a rad show. So I mean, Max, he puts on a full on show. So
no doubt.
Where were they playing?
they played Kelowna and they played Vernon.
Both the theaters?
No, small clubs.
Oh, nice.
Tiny
wow.
clubs. Yeah. So
Well, there you go.
Yeah,
I mean, people
it
still
was-
go out, you know, to see these shows.
yeah, it was awesome. So
Yeah. Oh man, I saw Sepultura probably 12 years ago, 10 years ago in Eindhoven.
wish I could have. Yep.
Yeah, but you know what? Me and my friend went and we're like, okay, we knew Max wasn't there. And we knew
Yep.
Igor wasn't there, but they had some guy who looked like Igor. And the only original member was the guitar player, I think. It was
Okay.
brutal. It was not good. And I think like we probably
Wow.
had to manage our expectations a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a strange thing. It wasn't Sepultura, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they have put out a couple cool albums since Max left, but
oh yeah.
but yeah, definitely it's not the same thing. So All right, that's it for episode 7. Thanks for hanging out with us. Please subscribe and comment on our YouTubes, like and share on Instagram at B-Sides and Beers Podcast, follow on Spotify, subscribe, rate and share on Apple Podcasts, pretty much every other streaming platform. Thanks a lot. Cheers.